So you know what happened yesterday, right? I'm uploading my video. I had 3 to upload. Upload 2. And then I click the button to upload the 3rd one. And what happens? I get this message saying, this account is prohibited from uploading. Now, if I had have known that that wasn't going to last very long, I would have screenshotted it. But I just thought, I don't have any influence. I don't have a million subscribers. I am a nobody, and kind of happy to be a nobody, to be honest. I don't have any influence. I can't gather a support base. I can't get anyone to hear me, so I just thought I will resign myself to this. And lo and behold, I thought, well, I'll check today. And it works again. Now, it could have been an innocent mistake. I mean, I'm not going to say to err is human, because as we all know, there's not a human being alive that works for YouTube anymore. I'm pretty sure if anything, it was probably just the algorithm being the algorithm, as usual. But it did get me to thinking. It activated the old almonds, as it were. I thought, you know what, if this is a problem that solves itself, what's another problem that might solve itself? Got me to thinking about the left, and how the left has this curious tendency to chew on its own tail, like the Ouroboros that it is. And I thought, you chew on that tail long enough, and eventually you're going to eat the head. So I thought, let's explore that. And whether the left is so murderous and rampant and insane that it may one day just solve its own problem for us. And then eventually I'll get to uploading that other video that I was going to upload yesterday before I had my nutsack squeezed in a vice. It was something to do with Minecraft. Anyway, let's explore the left eating itself.
If 7 independent hot dog stands band together to form a hot dog association because they need to leverage their position in the market, great. They should have the right to do that. The thing though, and you know it, and you can know it in your heart, and I'm going to say it right to the camera, they will all turn on each other. The left always eats its own. And the minute they gain what they want, they'll turn on each other because they're rapacious and they can't help themselves. They have to have a cause. Their identity is born of the cause. There was a great article that came out when the gay marriage, the Supreme Court, all that stuff. Okay, gay marriage is now part of the law of the land. Okay, there were articles about people being depressed because the movement was over. They'd won.
Yeah.
If that was your argument and you wanted it and you got it, great. That's an incredible victory if that's the side you're on. And having grown up and watched people die of AIDS and being part of that in my own particular way, I thought, good, great, you got what you wanted. Got to go on to the next thing, because it was about the identity of waving that particular flag. The victory was not in the thing. The victory was in the march.
Yeah, being a part of that big movement.
So understand, a lot of these trendies, the minute the thing gets boring or it gets too hard or it breaks down into policy, social movements are easy to begin. You're being disenfranchised. Yeah. Your vote counts. Yeah. When you get into the level of policy and regulation and sitting like I have at the local civic board meeting for 4 hours and they're talking about water mains, that's where most people, that's where the trendy stuff stops. Yeah, they'll tap out and or they'll turn on each other. So at least they're look in 20 years and see where they're at. They won't be still twizzling the New Year's toy, guarantee you.
The moment you're using violence to prevent someone from speaking, you are on the wrong side of the argument, by definition. How is that not obvious on the left at this moment? I mean, you're going to, burn down your own university to prevent someone from expressing views that you could otherwise just criticize? All of these protests were seen in response to right-wing or quasi-right-wing speakers being invited to college campuses by, I'm sure, the campus Republicans. These are so uncivil and unproductive. And again, this is almost entirely a phenomenon of the left. If you heard generically that some college campus had erupted in violence because a student mob had prevented a lecture from taking place, and the people who wanted to hear that lecture were spat upon as they tried to enter the hall, and finally attacked. You could bet with, 99% confidence that this was coming from the left. Now, in the age of Trump, when you really want to be able to say things against creeping right-wing authoritarianism, having an authoritarian anti-free speech movement subsume the left is a disaster politically. But I actually think the left is irredeemable at this point. And this is why I've begun to use the phrase, the new center. I think we need a new center to our politics. I mean, I don't know how you ever get the people writing for The Intercept or the people on the Young Turks to be reasonable human beings, given what they've done in recent years. And so that's the left, as it currently stands.
Back in November, when all the controversy was happening around myself and Wilfrid Laurier University, I made it very clear that I saw myself as a leftist. So I was actually very genuinely confused when people were instantly accusing me of having a right-wing agenda or whatnot. I just kind of naturally saw myself as being a leftist. I was pro-environment. I believed in climate change. I was pro-gay marriage. I took the bus everywhere. I didn't have a car. So I guess just naturally, kind of without really thinking about it, I placed myself on the left of the political spectrum. Then, I kind of stuck to that and still believed that throughout the whole controversy at Wilfrid Laurier University. But it's more recently, actually specifically the fallout from the Faith Goldie event that I helped organize as part of my club, the Laurier Society for Open Inquiry, that I realized I am not a leftist. So I realized finally, and I'm tuning in now, but people have been well aware of this before I've announced it now. But what is the left now? They're pro-censorship, right? They are victimhood culture. They are all about moral righteousness. They're taught that claiming to be offended results in a moral victory, and Jonathan Rauch wrote this over 20 years ago in his book Kindly Inquisitors. There's this victimhood mentality. They don't believe in personal responsibility. They are completely intolerant of diversity of thought, intolerant. They are humorless people. They want to make society boring, and they want to make it so that no one can do so much as make a joke. If you are not on their side 100%, they will slander you mercilessly. And it'd be funny if it weren't such a dirty trick. So, for example, they've released this photo of me standing beside two individuals at a crosswalk. And apparently, they're trying to make it so that because I stood beside these two individuals, I have absorbed the ideology of these two individuals, and I stand for what these individuals stand for. In this case, it's white nationalism, which I'm not. I'm not interested in white nationalism. So, an image like this, it would be very damaging for someone who wants to get a job in government, or social services, or who wants to work with children, right? If this image is out there of you, it's going to be damaging for your career. And so this is how the left tries to slander.
I used to think of myself as a progressive, but what I have a problem with all of this is that the left is attacking itself now. It's like there's no one who's progressive enough. No one. Like every single thing you do is a microaggression. Every single thing you do is based on white privilege, and therefore you're racist. And unless you somehow or another give up all your money and give up all your jobs, and there are people who are asking to do that too, by the way. There's people asking people to give their money and put them in black banks, give them to black people. I mean, we're going crazy.
This is literally it's not an individual psychosis, but it's a collective psychosis that we're watching. And I believe that in literal terms. We are watching a kind of group insanity.
It's contrary to the way human beings rationally discuss and debate ideas.
The chair of the faculty told me that the faculty meeting was not the place to defend myself against accusations of racism. I said to her, that's fine.
It's also not the place to
level.
Right,
to level the accusations. But I said, where is the place? And then the faculty member who had made the accusation said, you should not expect there to be a venue in which to defend yourself. You should just get used to these accusations. In a separate case, I was told...
What? Who said that? A white guy or... Oh.
No, it's the same faculty member who made the accusation.
Wait a minute. The person said that you should just accept these untrue accusations.
Yes.
What was your reaction to that? That this is not a place for you to defend yourself against racist accusations. This is a place for you to just eat shit.
The left has begun to spread so far out from center to far left that it's becoming unrecognizable. And within the Democratic Party, there is a battle. So look at this graph. I've shown this graph many times, but we're gonna elaborate. So I want you to look at this, and you can see how conservatives coalesce. They come together around core values. Here we can see in the 80s, the Democrats were rather centrist, and they've slowly moved further and further left. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this right here explains the culture war. See where it says, to the far left is more liberal, to the right is more conservative. The peak, the bulk, it's actually further left than Democrats were 8 years ago. And what that means is I'm someone who's like right here. And these people are accusing me of being right-wing. Why? Because I'm to the right of them. You see what happens. You're ending up, in terms of the culture war, there are people who are within this space right here, who are liberal, who are social liberal, who are center-left, who believe they are now conservatives because the mainstream media has beat them over the head so much, they think, clearly, they must be conservative, when in fact, they're not. They're so far away. But mainstream conservatives and the old school liberals who are being disaffected believed in they disagree with the idea of race-based policy and racial discrimination.
What has happened is that a new flag was unveiled in Philadelphia recently by a group calling itself More Color, More Pride. It features 2 new stripes, which are brown and black, to reflect the uniquely special place of LGBT brown and black people. It seems that not all on the left are on board with this. The rainbow flag usually consists of 6 colours, each having their own meaning, none of which has any relationship to race. And this was obviously unacceptable to other portions of the left, which are desperate to racialise everything they can. The new flag is sure to start a fight, which the LGBTs are sure to lose. Logic, as ever, has no place on the left. It doesn't matter that the flag has no relevance to race. This is about dominance and paying homage to a more marginalised group. Whoever is pushing this doesn't care what the colours on the pride flag represent, or if their brown and black stripes fit the scheme. This is merely about redefining another group's rules to assert power over it. If LGBT people want to retain the protection of the left, such as it is, they had better realise their lowly place in the scheme of things and come to terms with the fact that, in the left's ongoing oppression Olympics, only the weakest survive.
A protection racket is a scheme whereby a group provides protection to businesses or other groups through violence outside the sanction of the law.
To the left, as with Bill Nye, the so-called science guy, the truth of the natural world is often inconvenient and offensive. If there is no brown in the rainbow must be racist and corrected.
The left has a bad actor problem. What I'm witnessing in the present are bad actors that have control over the entire dialogue, and that is a very dangerous situation.
So is Bret correct here? Or to ask this question obliquely, when Bret criticised Evergreen for requesting that all white students and staff not attend campus for the day, did the left endorse those who called for his resignation? Was it left-endorsed actors who prevented Brendan from participating in an abortion debate simply because he doesn't have a vagina? Did Kathy Newman really represent the left when she implied that Jordan's right to free speech comes second to someone else's right not to be offended? Do the left really endorse the authors, journalists and news outlets that call Sam Harris and Douglas Murray a racist simply because they're concerned by the number of Muslims that support punishing homosexuals? These are pivotal questions, and here's why Bret thinks the answer to at least most of them is yes.
The first thing that I recognized a bit before things went haywire at Evergreen, or at least went haywire publicly, was that the people I was talking to, and most of the population at Evergreen is pretty far left, but I recognized that there was a hidden dichotomy between two populations within the left. One of those populations earnestly wishes equality, and there can be some debate over what it is that is being equalized, but virtually everybody on the left would say that they are for equality of opportunity. Then there is another population that does not wish equality of opportunity. What it wishes to do is to turn the tables of oppression. And the problem for us is that when these two populations are intermingled, they sound alike. And the most confusing aspect of it is that the people who are earnestly seeking something like equality of opportunity are unaware that they have signed up with something unholy and un-American.
Now this is a very interesting claim, and if true, it's arguably the most important political insight of our time. But it raises the immediate question, if this is really the case, then why haven't those who are earnestly pursuing equality of opportunity noticed those who are insidiously pursuing a flip of oppression? Well, Bret provides several compelling reasons.
One of the consequences of this dichotomy, the bad actors having taken control of the movement, is that they have begun to erect structures that lead a lot of people to sign up before they really know what it is that they're signing up for. So you'll find across the dialogue of the left at the moment, you'll find words that once upon a time had a definition that you might have struggled a little bit to resurrect it, but you could have figured out what words like equity probably meant. And those words have taken on very different meanings in the present, and they're actually part of a larger structure. So we have what I would call linguistic booby traps. We have policy proposals on college campuses and elsewhere that are actually Trojan horses that are described as pursuing one thing but actually serve a function other than the one that is on the title page. And then we have stigma that is playing an incentivizing role, or actually more correctly, a disincentivizing role. So people like myself who stand up against policy proposals that put my institution in jeopardy find ourselves faced with a social penalty for having done so.
My answer to the question, is the left eating itself, is no. For the simple reason that what we have on campuses in the US and the UK today is not left. This hyper-racial consciousness, this insistence on female fragility, this paranoid philistinism so that books are defaced with trigger warnings and everything from tabloid newspapers to sexy pop songs can be banned. This disavowal of your own autonomy, your own adulthood, and you're pleading with bureaucracy to provide you with psychic comfort. This use of racial phrases like white men, as if all white men have the same privilege, as if class, the building block of left politics, was irrelevant, or such a small thing that it didn't bear talking about. None of this is left. They are not left. I know this sounds like semantics, but it's incredibly important that we get this right. I know they call themselves left, but North Korea calls itself a democratic republic. People lie. And more importantly, people use progressive phrases to disguise reactionary agendas.
Now within this speech, Brendan does a fantastic job of emphasising that something is eating the left, and makes a reasonable case for why we shouldn't consider it left. But in doing so, he makes quite clear, to me at least, that him and Bret are on the same side in all but name. They both see the problem, but they disagree on what to call it.
We face a generation that has been schooled to reject Enlightenment thought, schooled to reject due process, schooled to reject freedom of speech, schooled to reject the ideal of autonomy, and encouraged to see themselves as fragile and weak and requiring bureaucratic therapeutic scaffolding in every area of their lives.
I've literally lost sleep over this observation. My generation and those after have indeed been schooled to reject Enlightenment thought, and yet most of my generation considers themselves left. And so while I think Brendan's correct when he says that prioritising offence over free speech and censoring opposing views is not liberal, I'm not so certain that it's not left. The left is indeed eating itself. It's at civil war, and it's about time, to echo Brendan's sentiment, that those who are falling for these booby traps, which may or may not include yourself, realise this. The classical left really does face a serious threat, and we, can no longer afford to ignore it.
And online, at least, the debate is over. Social justice and third-wave feminism and other leftist cult-like ideologies have been obliterated. Even stalwarts of their movement, the co-queen of social justice, along with Francesca Ramsey, Lacey Green, sees that her ideology is lost. No, it's been utterly annihilated, and she's scurrying to flee that sinking ship and rebrand herself as some kind of moderate. The bile and incendiary hate that comes from all sections of the social justice community regularly call for violence against those they designate oppressor classes, heterosexuals, cisgendered, thin people, or whomever disagrees with them. Even homosexuals, transsexuals, and people of color, Sikhs, Buddhists, Hindus, all lose their victim status and are grouped in with the oppressor class if they dare to stray outside the approved beliefs demanded of the adherents of social justice. These people engender the same personality traits that breed religious fanatics. Their beliefs have nothing to do with politics and everything to do with defining themselves by the group, its accepted core ideology, and their exclusivity toward it. The far left, and arguably the far right as well, is like a snake that eats its own tail. They both cannot tell friend from foe and simply attack anyone that they feel does not pass their purity test. But unlike the extreme right, the rabid left has no true end goal because their beliefs are founded in the conviction that there will always be inequality in society. Extreme feminists, social justice fanatics, and their ilk can never see an end because to win their struggle would mean it would have to cease to exist. This is the reason why no one can even enter into a dialogue with these fanatics, as there can never be an equitable outcome or even lasting solutions. The social justice movement is not about social justice, but about relentlessly bullying anyone who does not subscribe to their Stalinist ideology. One of their most beloved tactics that they gleefully desire to inflict is to dox people and use antiquated labels to describe anyone that disagrees with them. Nazi, fascist, something with a phobe or ist, while encouraging their fellow ideologues to commit acts of violence against those that do not conform to their self-defined parameters of right-think. If a woman does not believe she's a victim, let alone a yellow or brown woman, then she is a victim of some diabolical patriarchal conspiracy or has internalized misogyny and or racism and doesn't know any better. And lucky for her, as there is no shortage of these clowns that will not only speak for those that are confused and do not accept that they are a victim, but will also become offended in perpetuity on their behalf. Extreme social justice advocates, as well as feminists, see minorities as nothing more than political props and tools, as well as view all races as monoliths with intrinsic characteristics, which, ironically, is the absolute definition of racism. But in the end, what rabid feminists, as well as social justice warriors, do not realize is that they are single-handedly creating a generation that will swing to the far right. And the more ludicrous and extreme social justice is pushed in the media and on campuses, it will inevitably cultivate a future dominated by the other extreme.
Well, what ended up happening to Wheaton? He was harassed into oblivion. He said it was the cruelest place he's ever been to, and he was ultimately banned from the site for being anti-trans. That's right. Will Wheaton, who is a far-lefty member of the resistance, was banned from a far-left social network because he wasn't far-left enough. They called him anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ, and he says these charges are false. But it didn't matter. He was harassed endlessly, and ultimately the admins decided to ban him. They suspended his account, even though he broke no rules, and he was the one being harassed. They posted this quote from Will Wheaton. "Twitter is broken. You deserve better than an app that tolerates and welcomes the spreading of abuse and misinformation. Being part of this is not doing us any good. Personally, politically, socially. For a day, a week, forever, your call. It's just a good time to go." From willwheaton.net, he says, "The world is a terrible place right now, and that's largely because it is what we make it." He talks about how he was on Twitter from just the beginning. He thinks that he was the first couple thousand accounts. He says, "I remember when it was just a smallish group of people who wanted to have fun, make jokes, share information and tips on stuff that was interesting, and oh so many pictures of our pets, it was awesome. I thought that if I left Twitter, I could find a new social network that would give it some competition. Twitter's monopoly on the social space is a big reason it can ignore people who are abused and harassed while punishing people for reporting their attackers. So I fired up this account I made at Mastodon a long time ago. I thought I'd find something different. I thought I'd find a smaller community that was more like Twitter was way back in 2008 or 2009. Cat pictures, jokes, links to interesting things that we found in the backwaters of the internet. Interaction with friends we just haven't met yet. What I found was not that. I found a harsh reality that I'm still trying to process. Thousands of people who don't know me, who have never interacted with me, who internalized a series of lies about me, who were never willing to give me a chance. I was harassed from the minute I made my account. And although I expected the shut up Wesleys and go F yourselves to taper off after a day or so, it never did. And even though I never broke any rules on the server I joined, one of its admins told me they were suspending my account because they got 60 reports overnight about my account and they didn't want to deal with the drama. And this right here is Will Wheaton's Mastodon account. We can see that he only had 3,870 or so followers, much smaller from the 3 million he had on Twitter. But he posted a series of messages about what was going on. He started by saying, "I have been notified by an admin here that they are getting 60 reports a day about my account. As far as I can tell, I'm not breaking any rules and I've done my best to be a good person here. But this admin is going to suspend my account. It's the admin's instance, so I fully support their choice to eliminate a source of frustration, but something to consider. A person who is doing nothing wrong can be run off one instance by a mob from another instance. That seems not cool. This lie that I am anti-trans or anti-LGBTQ is deeply hurtful to me. I know it's nothing like the pain the LGBTQ people deal with every day, as they simply try to exist in a world that treats them so badly, but it's still hurtful in its own way to me. I just want to make it extremely clear, that is a lie, and the people spreading it are misinformed. So I'm leaving the Fediverse, which has treated me with more cruelty, vitriol, hatred, and contempt than anyone on the bird site ever did." He ends with, "Take your victory lap and collect your prizes. You've made it clear that I'm not welcome here, and even though I disagree with the action this admin is taking, banning me when I didn't break any rules doesn't seem right. I respect and support the admin's decision to run their instance the way they see fit. Please do your very best to be kind to each other. The world is a terrible place right now, and that's largely because it is what we make it. Bye." And it's much better being able to ignore people than being falsely accused and run off of another social network. Look at what happens with Will Wheaton on Mastodon. Will thought Twitter was so bad, and he went to Mastodon, he went to Counter Social, and Mastodon banned him. Or I should say they suspended his account because people were lying about him. That's rather terrifying. These things happen, they're called false flags. It happens on YouTube, it's happened to me, it happens on Twitter. Many people will get falsely accused of something, and these massive social networks can't deal with the overload of reporting, the brigading, so they'll just suspend somebody. But to see what happened to Will is just totally, well, it's absolutely terrifying. I think Will Wheaton can be a snarky dick. I think he can be a very mean person in a lot of ways. I think he lacks empathy for a lot of people who aren't inside his bubble. But I totally respect his right to do the things he does. I think he's worthy of criticism, and I've criticized him. I think leaving Twitter was a mistake because he had a huge platform there and he actually mattered to a lot of people. But look at what happens when he tries to support the far left. They destroyed him. He said it was the most cruel, the most vitriol he's ever experienced. That is absolutely detestable. Look, man, I have a lot of criticisms of Will, but that kind of a treatment of somebody is just wrong.
I find it pretty interesting that it's those of us on the left calling for prison reform and giving criminals a real shot at a second chance. But when it comes to crimes of social justice, there is no quarter given and no room for redemption.
You fucking sound exactly like right-wingers. You know that? The next comment is in the same vein. This person said, white people love giving other white people the benefit of the doubt. This Pew guy was following right-wing propagandists on Twitter.
First of all, following anti-SJW edgelords is not a crime. It's stupid, but it's not a crime. PewDiePie is the equivalent of a 15-year-old shit disturber. He comes from the world of gaming and memes, not the Third Reich. Here's a shocker for you. You can be a progressive, a leftist, a Marxist, even an anarchist, and still think SJWs are fucking ridiculous. There's literally an entire documentary on Jewish Holocaust humor. It's cathartic and empowering. Relax.
I saw it as a step forward in a situation with an individual who I have never seen take a real meaningful step forward. This was the first time that I've ever seen PewDiePie do anything that rang even remotely sincerely. So to me, it was remarkable in that sense. And when I say remarkable, I mean like worthy of remarking on in that sense.
How fucking dare you remark on such a thing? The nerve. Is it just me, or is anyone else getting George Bridges vibes from Non-Compete?
I think their concerns are legitimate. They're articulating ideas that have to do with race, ethnicity, power, privilege, and we're taking a look at them.
That's my problem, George. You keep doing these little hand movements or whatever.
Come through.
People were criticizing you for using hand gestures.
Absolutely, they were. And you know,
that seems crazy to people from the outside of Evergreen.
It may, but it's noise. But the noise has been effective.
No, fuck you, George. We don't want to hear a goddamn thing you have to say.
So you have to watch that door, watch all the doors, watch the windows. You need to keep eyes on them. And somebody needs to go in that room real quick to make sure that there's no way to get nothing.
I mean, essentially sounded like you're being held hostage there. If you were going to go to the bathroom, you had to go with...
I felt very safe there. Why what?
Why did they want to escort you to the bathroom?
I don't know.
Did you ask them?
No, of course not.
Of course not. Couldn't be possible that these people might be acting in bad faith.
A student told me that you're a white supremacist.
I don't believe I am. I'm
You
a
don't
white
believe
person.
you are, but you accept that you might be.
Well, it depends on what you mean by white supremacist.
It's starting to all sound pretty familiar, isn't it?
Okay, so there's like this common kind of slogan on the left, which is that like all white people are racist. I heard that a lot when I was first coming into leftism, and it bristled me a lot at first because I was like, I'm white and I don't like hate black people. I don't hate, foreigners. I don't like think that they're lesser people. But the more I dived into things, the more I realized like when we say all white people are racist, we're just saying that all white people benefit from racism, which is to say that there are just certain things that we don't suffer from, certain situations we don't find ourselves in, and certain advantages that we have, in society.
Then why don't you just say that? Why are you so married to the phrase, all white people are racists, if it's indeed as confusing as you say it is?
It's kind of irresponsible to make the claim that you're just like, I don't have a racist bone in my body, that kind of thing. Most of us, all of us do.
Non-Compete sees that no mercy is given to people like PewDiePie. So in order to appease the angry mob and avoid getting eaten alive, as a white guy on the progressive left, he pays lip service by declaring his own deep-seated and unavoidable racism. Because if all white people are inherently racist, then really any mistakes he makes are out of his control. He's just being what he is. So Non-Compete and people like him are forced to play this game of accepting all criticism and pretending to take it seriously and pretending that it's all valid.
Social media companies have become the new gatekeepers for a while now. And we have this story from 2016. Gizmodo. Gizmodo is not a conservative outlet. Former Facebook workers, we routinely suppressed conservative news. How about this from Jack Dorsey? The company was too aggressive in banning some accounts. We know that the media outlets are biased. We know that social media employees are biased. So why is it then that Vox is going to make this weird claim that is easily proven false? Desperation? Again, my 2 points for making this video. Desperation. Complete desperation. They need money, they need clicks, they rehash old stories, but more importantly, they are part of a fringe, dwindling bubble that is not mainstream. When you look at the victories across Europe for right-wing nationalism, when you look at Brexit and Donald Trump, it's clear that the left has lost middle America and average Americans, and are now part of some strange group that doesn't know what's going on. The best example? The predictions for 2016. How did they not see Trump coming? Very simply, they are not part of the mainstream anymore. They're becoming they're becoming fringe and getting crazier and crazier. We can talk about their policies, which swing so far to the left, doesn't even make sense for moderate Democrats anymore. Why so many people have become conservative or voted for Trump? Because the media doesn't speak to them. These people believe that the ivory towers of New York represent the opinion of middle America, and they don't. But worse still, as they can't capture actual people to watch their content, they become more and more desperate and grasp at straws. And that's where it gets truly, truly crazy.
Ask yourselves, does spreading this message really help us achieve the socialist utopia? Or are we just inciting disdain among people who might otherwise be receptive to the cause?
There was a Trump supporter that I spoke to at a rally, and he said that his second choice was Bernie Sanders. And I was kind of shocked, and I was like, but Bernie is so far from Trump. And he said, yeah, but what I was basically told by so many people is that it's not an issue of liberal conservative, it's an issue of supporting the working class. And that's Bernie, and that's Trump.
As Non-Compete points out, when we say things like all white people are racist, what we're really talking about is privilege. And fine, white men have privilege. But constantly fixating on who's got more privilege over who serves nobody but the 0.1%. You know, our real enemy. We're down here squabbling over whose set of nice teeth gets afforded better job opportunities and whose hip-to-waist ratio gets more lifelong positive social attention, while our overlords are laughing it up on yachts in southern France. Their goal is to restrict the scope of class conflict, to bring it down to as low a level as possible. The smaller and more local the political unit, the easier it is to run the oligarchy. So why turn inward? Why argue over who's got the sweeter deal and how we're all responsible for the gross inequality of society, when the difference is not that much more than a tiny sliver compared to the gap between us and the billionaires at Davos sipping wine and rubbing shoulders with the politicians?
As you will probably know, despite the left's ridiculous pretensions to be about equality, it is only interested in playing favourites to advance its agenda. And those who do not play by the rules will find themselves quickly and viciously ostracised, regardless of who they are and how many oppression boxes they tick.
And what does it say about the left that we feel like we have to do this every time we talk about a potentially sensitive issue? Is it really that we're all just trying to be respectful of marginalized groups? Or maybe is it that we're a little scared because deep down we know that a lot of us on the progressive left are crazy, virtue signaling, keyboard jockey, attention whores?
Two options: go inside, go home. That's it. I don't have time for anything else. I am too tired. This shit is literally gonna kill me.
Do you have time for an apology?
Go inside.
So let's be honest about why we're making these ridiculous concessions before we've even said anything. Our problem on the left isn't that too many white people are talking about issues that marginalized people face. Our problem is unreasonable people making unreasonable demands for personal gain. These are bad faith actors. Nothing more, nothing less. We need not give them any of our attention. It just makes us look silly and ridiculous every time we capitulate to these out-for-blood identity grifters.
The entire philosophy and purpose of the left is mindless destruction. It will always have a target and will turn on its own without notice to satisfy its destructive purpose. Its main target, of course, is the destruction of the West. But, like a Terminator, it will never stop destroying things until it is dead.
Our first story from Vox. Barack Obama warns against a circular firing squad over ideological purity in politics. We have to be careful in balancing big dreams and bold ideas with also recognizing that typically change happens in steps, Obama said. While taking audience questions about the frustration that comes with lack of change, Obama expressed concern about a lack of compromise in Washington and said he specifically worries progressive politicians could be alienating potential allies, saying, "One of the things I do worry about sometimes among progressives in the United States, maybe it's true here as well, is a certain kind of rigidity where we say, oh, I'm sorry, this is how it's going to be. And then we start sometimes creating what's called a circular firing squad, where you start shooting at your allies because one of them is straying from purity on the issues." The former president said he believes this approach weakens movements and that those that would like to see a progressive agenda have to recognize that the way we've structured democracy requires you to take into account people who don't agree with you. Obama ended his speech by advocating for patience and incremental change. We have to be careful in balancing big dreams and bold ideas with also recognizing that typically change happens in steps. And if you want to skip steps, you can. Historically, what's ended up happening is sometimes if you skip too many steps, you end up having bad outcomes.
Everything the left does militates against the natural order of the world. It is defined by its mental gymnastics that try to twist reality according to its unnatural agenda of sameness and failure. You will also notice that black and brown are at the top of the new flag, and that there is no white stripe, because white people don't get a stripe, because white people don't count in their schemes.
This year, Catherine's not just struggling to figure out the logistics of a march. She's fighting a rival women's event for attendees.
So it's been a lot of confusion, and it's a bit unfortunate.
Both events claim to be the official event.
People have been coming to you saying, okay, I'm really confused. Which march should I go to?
So I think you're confusing our group with Women's March Inc. We are Women's March Alliance.
But this is not a catfight over turf. It's a preview of a fight that will consume progressive politics in 2020.
I think our diversity here, and I think our inclusion of the Jewish community speaks for itself.
No one is allowed to feel comfortable where they stand, because the edicts from the PC left are designed to keep us on guard and keep redefining what is acceptable behaviour and what is not. The left has achieved its power through embarrassing and scaring everyone into silence. As Steve Saylor once put it, quotes, "Political correctness is a war on noticing. What matters is power and victory, not rational debate. Getting drawn into heated argument is fruitless and exhausting, and I'm sure most of us know that from personal experience. The longer we stand idle or in denial, the more people are going to be lost, perhaps permanently, to the lies of the left."
There's virtually no space to occupy between the extreme left and the extreme right that doesn't get you attacked by both sides on this issue. By virtue of that conversation, I am getting attacked as a Islamist shill and a racist xenophobe. It's incredible. There is no place. It is not even a razor's edge where you can stand to make sense on this issue.
And that's what I'm feeling about political debate. There is no sensible centre. It has become extremely partisan. Majorities come and go, and sooner or later people from opposing sides have to get together and agree on some basics, because if they don't, the outcome could be much worse. Now, this is not an appeal for everyone to come together, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I like vigorous debate and argument. I wouldn't do this if I didn't. I'm simply suggesting that we could all, myself included, get out of the echo chamber a little more and listen to the arguments of people on the other side of the debate.
An oft-heard quote in the past few years goes something like this: "I didn't leave the left left me." And for many on both sides of the Atlantic, it's actually very unclear what the left even stands for anymore. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, the anti-capitalist economic preoccupations of the old left began to take a backseat to the new way of understanding oppression. The politics of redistribution were replaced by a politics of recognition, and with this transformation, modern identity politics was born. And what makes identity politics significant and a departure from earlier movements is the demand, not for the inclusion within the fold of universal humankind, nor is it for respect in spite of one's differences. Rather, what is demanded is respect for oneself as different. For the DNC, identity politics trumps all others, and they believed it more important to elect the first female president by repositioning the party to represent the interests of a coalition of minorities, upper-class professionals, living in gated communities, of course, and powerful interests in Silicon Valley and Hollywood, than to convince working-class Americans that the Democrats were still their party. In the aftermath of Hillary Clinton's spectacular defeat, the party has fragmented, and the strongest voice in the Democratic Party isn't even a registered Democrat. Senator Bernie Sanders is a socialist and registered independent who was himself thrown under the bus by the DMC, as well as newcomer and corporate media favorite Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. The key takeaway is the abandonment of the middle and working classes for identity politics. Identity politics, favored for different reasons by academic and corporate interests alike, is now the central operating principle within which the parties on the left orbit. However, once identity politics gains momentum, it invariably subdivides, giving rise to ever-proliferating group identities demanding recognition. Jeremy Corbyn, a socialist who became the Labour Party leader by accident, no doubt imagines himself to be a champion of the working class, but this is a working class of his imagination rather than of the real world. He himself was brought up in a manor house and has spent his life working as an MP in a constituency that has never been touched by either industrialization or deindustrialization. What Mr. Corbyn is in fact presiding over is the transformation of the Labour Party from being one that champions the working and middle classes to a coalition of three main groups: ethnic minorities, particularly Muslims, public sector professionals, and radicalized millennials, most of them the university-educated children of the salaried middle class who can't get their feet on the property ladder. And just like in America, identity politics as well as oppression Olympic spiraling is at the center of the Labour Party. And of course, the British case is different from the American case, which is different from the German case, which is different from the Canadian case. But the left in virtually all countries in the Western world is unified by their utopian messianic complex that has taken on cosmopolitan globalism as their main tenet and worldview, and at all times emphasizes internationalism over national interests, group interests over shared interests, and in doing so have completely abandoned the role of representing the working and middle class voters. In the US, it was Democratic presidents who signed NAFTA and pushed for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Trade deals have their pros and cons, but the working class bore the brunt of the damage these deals caused. In both the US and the UK, the left champions mass, uncontrolled, and unrestrained immigration. But again, it is the working class, both in wage stagnation and in their neighborhoods, that have to deal with the consequences of these political positions. The political parties enjoying the most success and growth currently are those that espouse some combination of nationalism, populism, and economic protectionism. The old parties of the left have failed to grasp that this ideology appeals to the broad majority of the working and middle classes as well. The political tribalism of the left has gone from inclusion to division and never-ending purity spirals. Although inclusivity is presumably still the ultimate goal, at least in theory, in reality, the contemporary left is pointedly exclusionary.
You may have wondered, like I did, after the election of Donald Trump, will the left continue alienating its voters as it accuses them of being racist, Nazi, Hitler-loving KKK members, or will it take a moment of self-reflection and question why it failed to reach out to the disenfranchised middle America that ultimately elected Donald Trump? Well, it seems like not only are they continuing to alienate voters, it's doubling, no, tripling down on its racially aggravated, identity politics-driven narrative.
I'm a white woman. I don't get it. And I am from Idaho. We are so white. So white. And my job is to shut other white people down when they want to interrupt. My job is to shut other white people down when they want to say, oh no, I'm not prejudiced.
The progressive left is controlled by people like this.
Dear white people.
Smiling like a fucking crazy person, like she's just so happy and so proud of what she's about to say to the camera, like she's getting high off of her own social justice fumes.
Dear white people, you're fucked. You are. And no, I'm not just talking about one specific group of white people. I'm talking about every last one of you.
So definitely not hashtag not all white people. You're talking about all white people as a racial group. We're all fucked.
Y'all are fucked. Y'all are in real big trouble.
Even the teachers, the doctors, the lawyers.
The teachers, the doctors, the lawyers.
The optometrists, the cashiers, and the janitors.
The optometrists, the cashiers, I'm talking about the janitors, I'm talking about every last one of you are in very, very deep shit.
All white people are in big trouble because now that Trump has been elected, she and all of her fellow people of color are not going to help their liberal white friends at all. She is beaming at her audience. She is so happy about this self-righteous, condescending spite she has against all white people that she's failed to ask the question, what if white people just don't fucking care? After the election, why aren't you experiencing a single ounce of self-reflection? And more importantly, why do you feel it's more important to condescend to all white people than it is to pursue your own anti-Trump political agenda?
Please, brown and black people, we know what it's like to be oppressed now. Now we can unite. But the gag is, we don't want to unite with you.
Stop! Don't come back!
Jesus Christ, nothing and nobody is immune from this race-baiting nonsense. If you're a cis white gay male, even you are a target. Everyone is a target. After the election, I wondered if the progressive left would have a moment of self-criticism, but they definitely haven't. They've decided to stick to their principles, but the problem is, progressives don't have any principles, so all they can do is engage in these endless exercises of ego. All they have are vaguely defined buzzwords meant to give them the moral justification to launch endless moral panic. Progressives don't have any goals to achieve. Progressives just want to inflate their ego at your expense.
See, their morals, their code, it's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
Ultimately, the left will eat itself because it will eventually run out of targets if we don't stop it once and for all. Like rust, this corrosive presence in our midst never sleeps, so neither can we.